Reproductive strategies. The objective of this video is I can discuss animal behaviors and analyze how certain behaviors affect chances of reproductive success. We're going to need a little bit of review before we go on. Fertilization is the union of sperm and egg. Each sex cell contributes half the DNA for new offspring. In this video, we're only going to be discussing reproductive strategies for sexually reproducing organisms. So organisms whose goal it is, they need fertilization to have babies. There are two main strategies for fertilization. The first one is internal fertilization. That's when the sperm and egg unite inside of the female's body. This requires intercourse. The female then lays eggs or can give birth. Internal fertilization happens in animals like mammals, like us, birds, like this chicken, lizards, so on and so forth. We can see here the male sex organs of the male chicken are here, the testes. So sperm is made here in these testes, and it travels from his body into the female chicken's body to fertilize her eggs inside of her body. This is different from external fertilization. This is when the eggs are fertilized outside of the body. This is more common in animals like fish or amphibians. So for example, in this picture, we see male fish are fertilizing the female's eggs by releasing sperm in the area where the female just released eggs. Now that can happen like here in this picture, the female fish is laying eggs along the floor of the water on the ground, and then the male will lay its sperm right on top of the eggs. In some fish, this male will then protect this pile of fertilized eggs. It's actually like the fish have a nest underwater. Versus these fish, they swim all together, the males and females, and the females spray their eggs into the water, and then the males spray their sperm into the water, and they mix up in the water in a cloud, like you see in this picture. External fertilization is also how frogs fertilize their eggs. Now, while this looks like the chicken we saw in the previous picture, it looks like they're having intercourse. Their sperm and egg are not meeting inside of the female frog's body. Instead, they are sitting together, and the male is releasing the sperm, and the female is releasing the egg behind them, and the sperm and egg are meeting in the water, okay, not inside of the female's body. Now, there are some benefits or advantages, good parts about both internal and external fertilization. The benefits that animals that use internal fertilization have is that their offspring are more likely to be protected from predators when the offspring are still developing eggs or developing embryos. They're inside of the female's body, so it's like they have a bodyguard. This means that their offspring are more likely to survive. Whereas the benefits of external fertilization is there's way little energy required. There's no pregnancy required when an animal does external fertilization because the baby doesn't have to grow inside of the female. This means that they can make way more offspring. It requires so little energy, they can make lots and lots of babies, like this frog. Look at all those eggs. Also, their offspring can more easily spread out so they don't compete. The brothers and sisters won't be fighting for food or fighting for space or future mates. Now, internal and external fertilizing organisms also have varying amounts of what we call parental investment. This is how much time and energy parents put into their offspring. Humans and mammals in general have high parental investment. They use internal fertilization. They carry the baby inside of the female's body for pregnancy, And then when it's born, the baby is so helpless, it still requires a lot of help from its parents to stay alive. So the parents have to invest a lot of time and energy. These spiders, however, have very low parental investment. The female spider does have internal fertilization, so the sperm and egg meet inside of the mother's body, but once she lays the eggs are left out in the open. She doesn't come back to them. She doesn't check on them. And then one day, the egg sac just pops open and baby spiders, fully capable of living on their own, pop out, and mom never checks on them, never feeds them, never takes care of them. Now, these two reproductive strategies mean that spiders and humans have very different survivorship curves. Humans and other mammals have what we call a type 1 survival curve. That means that the survival is high at early age. Very few babies with high parental investment die at a young age. So you can see here on this graph the number of survivors versus age. We have on our red line for type 1, most of the babies are surviving, and they're surviving for their whole life. They only start to fall off once they get older, which we would expect. You can't live forever. So they die of old age, not from predators or dying right after birth. Now, the spiders have more of a type 3 survivorship curve, like this oyster too. We saw all of those babies pop out of that egg sac, but the sad truth is the reason mom had so many babies and didn't check on them is it's expected that most of them are going to die right after they're born, and then they will slowly age and die off. But a huge mass of those babies, most of those babies are going to die off right after they're born. Survivorship curve type 2 is something like squirrel or birds. They're somewhere in the middle. Their survival remains constant throughout their entire life. So here are some organisms you might recognize showing the difference between a type 3 survivorship curve, which is also called a type R strategist, or a type 1, a type K strategist. So apes are very similar to us. They take care of their babies. They're pregnant for a long time. And then when their babies are born, they require a lot of attention. So they only have a baby once every 5 years. It takes a lot of parental investment. This cougar will have a baby, 2 babies a year. That's still a lot of attention and time given to those babies. Whereas on the other end of this spectrum, we see fishes and oysters having hundreds of thousands. Look at all of these babies, 8,000 babies for a goldfish a year. That mama goldfish is not taking care of all those babies, and most of them will die because of it. But the reason the goldfish population goes on is they just have a lot and hope that at least some of them survive on to the next generation. Both of these reproductive strategies are successful. They're just successful in different ways. The goldfish isn't a bad mom. She just doesn't, her species doesn't require a lot of parental investment. The goldfish species is successful because they have a lot of babies, and so they can afford to have a number of them die in the beginning. Whereas type 1, their strategy is also successful. They put a lot of time and energy in just a few babies because they don't have many babies, so they have to make sure the few they have do survive.